Masculinity has been talked to death in recent years, and will continue to be talked to further death because it and femininity are these kinds of ethereal topics that are ultimately somewhat subjective, so no matter how much you think you know on the topic, you can always find a fresh, new perspective on it that challenges and makes you think about it more deeply. And while a ton of video game characters and movie characters have been measured by the big, thick, throbbing stick of masculinity, even on this channel sometimes just for shits and giggles, I haven't seen such an analysis conducted on Mortal Kombat characters, which is a shame because there are a wealth of archetypes here to dig into. So let's do that. Shao Kahn, Liu Kang, Raiden, Boraicho, Johnny Cage, Kung Lao, Kano, Shujinko, the ninjas, the sorcerers. There's a lot to dissect here, analyze what masculine traits these characters bring to the table, and see what we can learn from each and every one of them while also keeping it short and sweet. Or not. I don't know, I make these up as I go. In no particular order, let's start with the textbook workaholic CEO of the Mortal Kombat universe, Shao Kahn. Daddy Kahn is pretty much the poster boy for toxic masculinity, but this video will not discuss toxic or non-toxic, good, bad, blue, black, orange, or papaya yellow shades of masculinity. We'll just extract any trait that roughly fits the broader term and offers any kind of utility while keeping the morality aspect of the discussion to a minimum. The first thing that stands out to me when it comes to Shao is not what many of you might think. Yes, he's ruthless, yes, he's a narcissist, physically imposing, domineering, powerful, big muscles, but the one overarching trait that makes this character what he is industriousness. Industriousness is a pretty broad term that encompasses things like drive, ambition, work ethic, and a general willingness to take the necessary steps in order to achieve one's goals. There isn't a single character that beats Shao Kahn here, not from Mortal Kombat nor most other games. This man managed to overthrow one of the most powerful beings in the entire mythology of MK and expand his empire by about 42,000%, gobbling up world after world, conquering realms and assimilating them into Outworld to the point where the gods themselves had to create a bunch of arbitrary rules and conditions to slow his progress down. This is a man who does whatever is necessary in order to win, which is exactly the kind of mindset that the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company has. Pride, health, politeness, relationships, and Saturday evening Netflix are all secondary to success. And while this level of industriousness is arguably ultimately destructive, some people can and are willing to pull it off. Shao Kahn is one of those people, for during the countless millennia in which he has ruled as emperor, never once has he been ousted, deposed, overthrown, double-crossed, backstabbed, swindled, or so much as been sold a fake iPhone because he's paranoid enough to obsessively vet every single servant, learn everyone's weaknesses, crush any hint of rebellion, root and stem, hire 20 taste testers a week, and has otherwise developed a sixth sense for treachery. Which is not to say he makes it a point to never treat with anyone. He sometimes did in fact use diplomacy when dealing with strong peoples like the Shao Kahn, and parlayed with the likes of the Netherrealm to resurrect Sindel and further his goals of conquest. He knows his limitations and what to do to get around them. Poisoning the Dragon King is another great example of this. In spite of his narcissistic, megalomaniacal tendencies, he always ultimately answers to his goals instead of his ego and is willing to do whatever is necessary in order to win. And if we're talking about conquest Shao Kahn, it gets even better, because in that version of events, Shao is technically a god and brother to Raiden, yet Raiden was the favored child who got to be god of lightning and protector of Earthrealm, while Shao got to eat shit and was sent off to govern Outworld, which at the time was a useless backwater of a realm. Yet Shao being Shao, he took his one pair of twos and made a full house out of it, turning Outworld into the biggest superpower in the cosmos and conquering virtually every other realm except Earthrealm by the time the show begins. So great was his ambition, his guile, and his patience that he outperformed literally every other force around him. And I quite like this version of Shao because there's a clearer motive behind his insatiable drive beyond me wants. He was scorned, disgraced, and tossed aside. So he went,
"Fuck you. Watch this."
Which is, in fact, the masculine response. In many ways, this is the ultimate version of Shere Khan, since over the course of this show you get to see all the stuff I just babbled about play out. Shao Kahn is ruthless, cunning, patient, he's beset by traitors on all sides, he gets embroiled in a war with a formidable force, and he deals with all of that in the most Shao Kahn of ways, for lack of a better term. The final episode is particularly devious and perfectly showcases what this character is all about, something the old folks at NRS seem to have forgotten. No, I won't spoil the episode. Go watch it. Not yet! after the video. His relationship with Kitana is also rather interesting here. Instead of lying to her for thousands of years pretending to be her biological father, this Shao Kahn either told Kitana the truth or never got the chance to hide it. Kitana harbors no illusions about Shao Kahn's role in destroying her realm, which is somehow even more impressive. To keep her loyal for so many eons, even if it's through fear, is a pretty baller display of his competence. And while it's pretty hyperbolically ruthless, I'm sure plenty of you have seen plenty of examples of men trying to find all sorts of excuses for their actions, only to end up seeming like weak, pathetic fools who are incapable of taking ownership over their own decisions in the process. So Shao Kahn scores a pretty significant macho point here, even if it's greatly exaggerated. He also seems to have a thing for Kitana, which is one of the more uncomfortable aspects of gender relationships to talk about, but an important one to occasionally portray, because just as the lion who eats his own cubs, the unhinged masculine ends up coveting that which should not be coveted, and lands in this kind of reverse Oedipal, self-sabotaging Ouroboros devouring its own tail kind of situation. That's enough of that vocabulary. In any case, a masculine ruler prioritizes his own agenda, but also occasionally listens to his subjects to keep the realm somewhat happy and stable, and to keep himself from getting overthrown, so he tempers raw masculine impulses with a tinge of what could be called feminine common sense. Shao Kahn says fuck that and refuses to tap into anything remotely clitorally shaped, and instead doubles down on the wellspring of manhood and overspilling as a result. He taps into a higher tier of this energy and says, I will not listen to any of you, I'll do whatever the fuck I want, and I invite each and every one of you to try and overthrow me. This makes Shao Kahn a very unbalanced individual, adhering to the way of confrontation completely. It's kind of like food that has only one taste, because hitting a certain balance of sweet, salty, savory, and so on, that's what makes foods palatable, whereas if foods were just sweet and just salty, you'd jettison your insides after one bite. Tapping into only the masculine or only the feminine is kind of the same. And there's a very real, very biochemical expression of this, because one of the side effects bodybuilders experience from injecting enough exogenous testosterone in them to fill a tub is increased aggression, irritability, and just generally being on edge for no reason. It's sacrificing the self for the goal. Another thing to mention about him is that while conquering is one of the most masculine endeavors you could pursue, taking without giving is not. Shao Kahn just takes, and there is no outlet, no end point for any of what he acquires. It's an unfinished transaction. Generally, the man takes so he can give back to either the community, to women, to a family, to children, or to the world at large, adding to the great circle of life. Yet only a cynic would call Shao's relationship with the feminine, family, or community good. The only wife he ever took killed herself to get away from him. He treats his stepdaughter like a means to an end, while commissioning a double to low-key replace her over time, and he'd much rather take away all the resources of his subjects rather than give them so much as a 2% coupon code. Or if he did, the coupon discount would be for a statue of himself so they could better worship his ridiculous biceps. But the thing is, all you need to do to get all of the benefits and none of the drawbacks is to have 20 to 80% of his industriousness. Literally any amount will do for lazy fucks like you and I, and fill the rest with less dark triad traits and more common sense and compassion, and you've pretty much struck gold, or oil, or test, depending on your preference. And look at me, hoping to rapid fire through all these characters and instead lingering on the very first one. That'll have to be it for now, but if you'd like the masculinity train to continue, like the thing, share the thing, and I'll tackle some of the other characters as well. Alternatively, I could just go outside for the first time ever. I hear it's pretty dope. Industriousness is a pretty broad term that encompasses industriousness.